So the Premier League season is over, so in today's video I'm going to be going through my Premier League awards, and this isn't just going to be positive awards, there's also going to be some negative awards, and also I'm going to end off with some team awards. But let's start off with more of the traditional Premier League awards that you see, and the first one is the Player of the Season. And as you can see on the screen, here are the 8 nominations, and let's go through and discuss each one. Starting off with Bruno Fernandes, who actually won the Premier League award, and I completely understand why he was nominated. He's officially broken the record for the most Premier League assists in a season. He's been outstanding for Man United. Then you've got Gabriel. I think Gabriel's been very good. I think he has dropped off a bit in the second half of the season, but I still think that's a fair nomination. Then we've got Morgan Gibbs-White. I think this is the nomination that I wouldn't have included. I think Gibbs-White's been really good for a couple of months, but I actually think before this he was actually underperforming, was Gibbs-White, so I'm very surprised by this nomination. Who would have I nominated instead? I would have even nominated Nico O'Reilly or Dominic Szoboszlai for me. I think those two players would be deserving of a nomination for the Player of the Season award. Another person you could have nominated was William Saliba, who's been outstanding at centre-half for Arsenal in the second half of the season. Then the next player is Erling Haaland. I think this is completely fair. He is the top goal scorer. Then we've got David Raya. I also agree with this nomination. I think he's been brilliant in goal for Arsenal this season, and of course he's kept the most clean sheets. Then we've got Declan Rice, essential for Arsenal, completely understand it. Antoine Semenyo, completely understand it. I think the best winger in the Premier League this season. And then finally, Igor Thiago. And look, I can understand this. He's the second top goal scorer in the Premier League. So who would I pick? I would be picking Bruno Fernandes as my Player of the Season. I don't really know who else you can actually pick. I think if you were to pick an Arsenal player, I'd actually be very tempted to go with David Raya, because I think Rice and Gabriel have been very good at points in the season, because I just think he's been so consistent for Arsenal this season. I think Rice and Gabriel have been good, but I think at points they have struggled. So I think for that reason, I would actually go with David Raya if you were to pick an Arsenal nomination. But my actual winner is the official Player of the Season, which is Bruno Fernandes. So then I'm on to the next award, and it is the Manager of the Season. And Mikel Arteta officially won this award. But who was nominated for this? So we've got Keith Andrews at Brentford. A very good season with Brentford, but they have dropped off at the end of the season. Then we've obviously got Arteta winning the title for Arsenal, and he could potentially do a double. Then we've got Michael Carrick, done a very good job since coming in as interim for Manchester United. Then I've got Guardiola, obviously did a cup double, and you're going to give massive credit to him for that. And I'm pretty sure with his awards, they do take into account other competitions, which I will be doing. Then I've got Andoni Iraola, a sensational job with Bournemouth this season, where it looked like they could have potentially struggled after losing so many key players in the summer. And then finally, Regis Lebris, what a job he's done with Sunderland, getting them into Europe after coming up from the Championship. Who would be my Manager of the Season? I'd go with Regis Lebris. I think he's done an outstanding job with Sunderland, and it's incredible really the fact that they're going to be in the Europa League next season. No one saw this coming. Most people probably had Sunderland to go down, and I think he deserves huge credit for this. If Arsenal were to win the Champions League, then I'd 100% give it to Arteta, but as it stands, we don't know if that will happen. So for now, my Manager of the Season would be Regis Lebris. In terms of someone else I think they could have nominated, potentially Unai Emery, who's done an outstanding job with Aston Villa this season, getting a top 4 and a Europa League. But who would you switch out for Unai Emery? I'm not really sure. It's quite a difficult one, so I'm fine with those 6 being the nominations. So then I've got the award for the Young Player of the Season, and here were the official nominations. So first of all, we've got Ryan Cherki. Brilliant season at Manchester City, but he was unavailable for quite a few games at the start of the season. Then I've got Matheus Fernandes, a very good season with West Ham despite going down. Lewis Hall, who I really rate at left back, but I think there is a better left back in this list, which is Nico O'Reilly. Then I've got Kyoto, very good season at Brentford, and he's obviously got that tool of a long throw. Then we've got Krupi, very good season at Bournemouth. I think the only issue for a player like Krupi is the lack of minutes, because he's actually come off the bench in a lot of his games. If Krupi started more, then he may have had a genuine chance at the Young Player of the Season, but I think there is someone better in this. Then I've got Kobbie Mainoo. I would say he's the weakest out of all of these nominations because Mainoo's only played half a season and I think he's only really come to life in the last couple of months. I think that's a bit of recency bias selecting Mainoo as a young player of the season. I think that's quite similar to the selection of Morgan Gibbs-White for the player of the season. Then I've got Nico O'Reilly. He is the official winner and you can completely understand why. He's been outstanding for Manchester City this season. And then finally, Alex Scott, a very underrated midfielder, and he's had a very good season at Bournemouth. Who would be my winner? I would go with Nico O'Reilly, the official winner. I think this one's fairly obvious. He's been brilliant for City this season at left back. He's had some season, has O'Reilly. So then I'm on to the most underrated player in the Premier League this season, and I've narrowed it down to 3 nominations. One being Noah Siddiqui at Sunderland, who I think's got under the radar this season because I think Granit Xhaka has taken a lot of the credit in that Sunderland midfield, but Siddiqui is just so important. And I could see him getting a move to a big club in the summer because he's just such a young player. Then the next nomination I've got is John McGinn. I think McGinn's excellent for Aston Villa, and I just think he's so important to that side. When McGinn doesn't play, Villa struggles so much. And I think we've seen this because McGinn's been out for some games this season for Villa, and they've really struggled. I think they also just miss his leadership. And then finally, I've got Matheus Nunes. I think he continues to go under the radar at right back. I actually think he's been the best right back in the league this season. A lot of people would say Timber, I understand that, but Matheus Nunes offers so much going forward, and he's actually improved defensively so much at right back. And it's another Pep masterstroke moving someone from one position to another. If I had to put the most underrated player on that list, I'm going to go with Noah Siddiqui because I just think he goes so under the radar because of the credit that Granit Xhaka gets, which is completely fair, but people just end up forgetting about Siddiqui. So now I've got the most improved player and I've got 5 nominations to discuss. The first one being Nico O'Reilly. He had a very good season at Manchester City, and last season he was barely playing for City, but I think I have a better nomination than him. Then I've got Casemiro. I think very few people thought he was good enough to consistently start for Manchester United in the league this season. But he's actually been brilliant, and he's also come up with a lot of goals for United, which isn't a huge surprise because we've seen previously with Casemiro, he's a real threat in the air. Then I've got Matheus Nunes. Once again, I think he's improved on last season a lot. He now looks completely comfortable at right back, which he didn't look so much last season. I can remember him struggling quite a few games at right back, but I've decided to go with another name. Then I've got a name that I was very close to saying, and that was Emi Buendia at Aston Villa. I think at the start of the season, no one expected Buendia to play such a crucial role in Villa's season, because last season he was on the fringes of Unai Emery's squad and he was a player that Villa were actually looking to sell. But this season he's been brilliant and integral at points, and he scored that brilliant goal in the Europa League final. But my most improved player is James Hill. And the reason why is because that last season he couldn't get anywhere near that Bournemouth side. He couldn't even get on the bench. But this season he's been brilliant for them, and he's really stepped up in that centre-half role, replacing Zabarnyi and Huijsen. And him and Senesi have been brilliant together, and it's a crucial reason why Bournemouth have ended up in a Europa League position. So then I've got the best signing of the summer, and I do have quite a few to go through here. Starting off with Dewsbury Hall to Everton. What a play he's been for Everton this season, and he only cost £24 million, a very good deal by Everton. Then I've got Anton Stack to Leeds, being crucial for them this season for only 17 mil. Then I've got Donnarumma for 26 mil. I mean, that's unbelievable business, really, from Manchester City. And Donnarumma is going to be a player that's crucial for City in the future. And same with Ryan Cherki for 30 million. I would say Cherki's probably in the top 3 signings of the summer, but I don't think he's quite at the best. Then I've got João Pedro for 60 million to Chelsea, being sort of a standout player for Chelsea this season in a crap side. Then I've got DCL on a free. What a piece of business this was. Cost him absolutely nothing, and he's delivered 14 Premier League goals. Then I've got Lamens for 18 million, an absolute bargain, really. Lamens has been for Manchester United this season. And he's just been a reliable piece of hands, which United have been missing for so long. Then I've got a whole lot of Sunderland signings. So starting off with Noah Siddiqui for 15 million. What a deal that has been for Sunderland. Then I've got Nordi Mukiele for 9.5 million. And then Roos for 9 million. Both of those signings are just bargains, really, from Sunderland. And Sunderland have just made so many great signings, easily the best transfer window. And they also made, in my opinion, the best signing in the summer. And that was Granit Xhaka for £17 million. What a bargain he's been. He's been crucial for Sunderland all season, and it's not just the player, it's also the leadership that Xhaka provides. What a deal that was. Now let's go through the best January signings. So that was summer signings. Now let's look at January signings, and for this one I've only got 3 nominations. The first one being Mark Gahey for £20 million. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being the best deal, because they bought, in my opinion, a top 5 Premier League centre-half for only 20 mil, a very good piece of business. And then Semenyo for £60 million. It is quite expensive from Bournemouth, but so far he has been worth that price that they have paid. But my winner is Pascal Gross to Brighton for only £2 million, and he's been very good for Brighton since coming into that midfield. So now we're on to some negative awards, and starting off with the worst Premier League signing this season, and I do have a bunch of signings to discuss. The first one being Emmanuel Broja to Burnley for £20 million, an absolute waste of money for a striker that just hasn't been anywhere near good enough. And I just don't understand this, because Broja's been at a lot of different Premier League clubs recently and failed, so I don't know why Burnley bought him for £20 million. Then I've got Kalamandu for £20 million, another waste of money so far from Nottingham Forest. I think this deal could end up being alright, but they spent £20 million on a player and then just loaned him out. Then I've got a terrible piece of business, and it's John Arias to Wolves for £15 million, and he's not even at Wolves anymore. He's departed the club, a shocking piece of business, and he was terrible for Wolves. I had a lot of hope for Arias, but he's just struggled so much in a Wolves shirt, which is why he's not at the club anymore. Then I've got a group of Chelsea signings, starting off with Liam Delap for £30 million. I thought this was a decent piece of business, but he's been terrible for Chelsea. And then I've got Gittins. He's struggled to stay fit, in fairness, but he's just not worth £50 million right now at all, is Gittins, and I just think it's a complete waste of money. And it's definitely a waste of money if you think about the fact that Chelsea also bought Garnacho for £50 million, which is absolutely scandalous. I can't believe they bought a player like Garnacho for that much. But also, his attitude absolutely stinks. It was such a bad deal from Chelsea. Then I've got a couple of Villa signings, starting off with Gessons, who is now on loan at Crystal Palace. He was shocking when he came in. And then I've got Harvey Elliott, who joined Villa on loan. It's not a terrible signing for the club because it hasn't cost them a lot, but it's just a terrible signing for all parties. Villa haven't used the player because they can't pay the future fee. Liverpool have just had a player rotting at Villa all season, and for Elliott it's just shocking. He just hasn't played any minutes for Villa this season. And you have to feel for the player because he could have played a vital part for Villa this season, but it's more due to the fact that Villa can't afford to pay the future fee, so their solution is just not play him at all. Then I've got Florian Wirtz for £115 million. So far, he's not been anywhere near worth it. I think in the future, though, this will be a good signing. Then I've got Jeremy Frimpong for £30 million. I think he's been getting away with it, has Frimpong, because I think everyone's been talking about Wirtz and Isak, who I'm going to discuss later, but no one's talking about how bad Frimpong's really been. Of course, the fee's a lot cheaper, but you want more from your replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and so far it just hasn't worked out for Frimpong at all. I do think, however, that is more of a system issue of a player like him. Then I've got Isak. So far, it's been a shocking signing for Liverpool. Hasn't played any minutes, and when he has, he's really struggled. In fairness, that is due to injuries. Then I've got Anthony Elanga to Newcastle. It's a terrible piece of business from Newcastle, spending £50 million on a player that just hasn't performed at all for them this season. But the worst signing, without doubt, for me, is Yoane Wissa to Newcastle for £50 million once again. And why is it so bad? Well, he was injured for the first half of the season. Second half of the season, he's been shocking. He's fallen out with the Newcastle fans, and he only had 1 year left on his deal. So Newcastle could have just waited until now and just got Wissa on a free, but instead they spent £50 million on a player that's given them no return so far. It's absolutely shocking. So I'm on to the most underperforming Premier League player, and I've got a list of nominations to talk about. First of all, I've got Belieber. I expected so much more from him this season, and he just really hasn't delivered at Brighton. He's almost played himself out of a move. He may still leave Brighton in the summer, but there's a lot less interest in him now. Then I've got Martin Odegaard. Despite Arsenal winning the league, Martin Odegaard has underperformed this season. That is partly due to injury, but he's also struggled to get back into the 11 when he's been fit. Arteta at points has preferred Eze and Havertz over Odegaard. Then I've got Cole Palmer. This is mainly due to injuries, but I have still been disappointed with Palmer's contribution this season, and now he's not going to the World Cup with England. I think he needs to go and get that surgery so he's back to his best next season, because he's a top player, is Cole Palmer. Then I've just got pretty much the whole Spurs squad apart from a couple of players, and then I've also got the whole Liverpool squad apart from Szoboszlai. That's pretty much the only players that haven't underperformed from those two sides. In terms of who I'd go with the most underperforming Premier League player this season, I would go with Mohamed Salah at Liverpool. I think this is fairly obvious. Last season, he was the player of the season. This year, he's been poor and just not good enough for Liverpool at all. Now let's go through the worst Premier League managers, and I've got a whole lot to discuss. Starting off with Arne Slot at Liverpool. It's not been good enough from Slot this season, and I think he's lucky to not be sacked at Liverpool. Liverpool have regressed in every area. Then I've got Liam Rosinha. He hasn't been a good manager at all for Chelsea this season. It was just a crap appointment altogether, and I don't really blame Rosinha for the Chelsea struggles. I more blamed the higher-ups. Then I've got Eddie Howe at Newcastle. Once again, I think it's more due to a chaotic summer, but he hasn't been good enough as a manager this season. Then I've got Ange Postecoglou. I think this is the worst managerial appointment of all time, appointing Ange as Forest manager, but I don't think he's the worst manager this season. Then I've got Graham Potter, made a poor start at West Ham, which eventually led to them getting relegated. So then I've got the two Spurs managers, starting off with Thomas Frank. Ironically, since Frank's left, Spurs have actually got worse, but Frank was the major problem for Spurs, and he was a crucial reason for why Spurs ended up in this relegation battle. He just wasn't good enough to manage Spurs, and his style of football just never really worked. They were way too pragmatic under him. But the worst Premier League manager this season, it just has to be Igor Tudor. He only picked up 1 point in 7 games as Spurs manager, and Igor Tudor assured Spurs would be in this relegation battle. Tudor's job was to ensure that Spurs stayed up, but he actually just dragged them into it further, and it required Roberto De Zerbi to get them out of the relegation battle on the final day. Now let's finally go through some team awards, and I've got a positive and a negative award to go through. Starting off with the biggest overperformance this season, and as you look at the table, there are some sides that have definitely overperformed this season. I think Man United have overperformed for their expectations this season. I'd say Villa have, if you consider the fact that they've won a Europa League and got top 4. You go down the table, Bournemouth have definitely overperformed, Brentford have overperformed, Sunderland have overperformed, and so have Leeds, finishing in 14th place. For me, the biggest overperformance though this season was Sunderland, finishing in 7th place after coming up from the Championship. It's an unbelievable effort from Sunderland, really, and they will win the Europa League next season. In terms of the biggest underperformance, well, you've obviously got Wolves finishing rock bottom on 20 points after being an established Premier League side before this. You've got West Ham going down. You've got Chelsea, who have been crap all season. You've got Liverpool, who finished in 5th place, which is a real disappointment. You've got Newcastle, who finished in 12th place. You've got Forest, who have really had a chaotic season. They've ended up finishing in 16th place after finishing 7th place last season. But it's got to be Spurs, who survived relegation on the final day. It's shocking from Spurs. They shouldn't be anywhere near a relegation battle, and they were so close to going down. So that is the end of this Premier League Awards video. Please let me know your thoughts on it. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? And if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could subscribe to this channel as well as liking the video.